Hello, welcome to Look Out with me, Andrew Kay. Anyone who knows me, who's ever been to my home, will know that my walls are covered floor to ceiling with works of art. I've been collecting since I was a teenager. It's a wonderful habit. Some of my friends say it's an illness, but I think it's something fabulous. And one of the best ways I've found of buying things is in Brighton at the Artists' Open Houses, and I'm delighted to welcome to the studio today Judy Stevens, one of the directors of AOH. Thank you for coming in, Judy.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, we've known each other for more years than we're probably willing to confess, but we did work out earlier that it's nearly 4 decades, because back in prehistory I was an art director in London and you were working as an artist who had gone to the dark side and started to do work on commission as an illustrator.
That's right, yes.
That must have been quite a change, because back when I was an art student there was a strange sort of difference between those of us who studied design and those who studied fine art. There was in some cases a level of elitism, not everybody but some cases.
Yes, I think it's true, and so it was a decision that had to be made, I think probably from economic necessity. Some people considered it selling out and working to commission, to being told what to do. But actually, in some ways it's quite liberating.
It didn't change the content or your methodology, did it?
No. I mean, I think I saw the two areas as quite separate, that I still like to do my own work. But sometimes it's really nice to be told what to do.
Yes.
And
yes.
And new ideas can grow out of the fact that you've got that limitation on the content, and then you're working with ideas on how you actually make the work.
It's always fascinating when people put limitations on what you do. I agree, and I've always enjoyed the fact that in my line of work as a designer, I've always been working for a client, really. And it's only now, as I've hit my 60s, that I've actually started to paint and draw again in the way that I did when I was a student.
Yes.
And that's quite liberating.
Yeah.
The Artists' Open Houses, when did they actually start?
Well, the whole history of the open houses, it's really long, and it's probably well over 30 years now, when one artist in the Five Ways area opened his house, originally as a part of Brighton Festival, when Brighton
Yes.
Festival was a really small festival. And then other houses in the area in Five Ways also opened. And the movement grew, more houses in different areas of the city opened. And then they became part of Brighton Fringe, when Brighton Fringe originally began. And as Brighton Fringe grew, the open houses really got lost in the many, many pages of Brighton Fringe. And at that time, there weren't really pictures or maps, so it was quite hard for visitors to work out what house to go to. So probably 20 years ago, my partner and I, with a few other artists who were also involved in the open houses, decided to set up the open houses as a festival in its own right.
You knocked it into shape.
We did, really, yes.
I mean, did you set out to make it more commercially viable at that point? Because it must cost an awful lot of money to do this. I mean, you have to put together this beautiful brochure, and it is always beautiful. But there's that, the administration of it. It must be an
I think we
expense.
started from a position of total ignorance, and I think if we'd had any idea what we were taking on, we wouldn't have done it. So it was a really interesting learning curve. And to begin with, to be honest, there was just the brochure, because it was sort of before the days that websites were really essential, and certainly no social media. So yeah, we had to learn as we went along, but actually it's been a really, really interesting journey, and I think we're quite pleased with how it's gone.
Now, that first person up at Five Ways was a very serious painter, producing large abstract canvases. The nature of our Artists' Open Houses has changed over the years. Very much so, and I know that you know that there were points at which I was going out and looking, and on several occasions going out to judge the best open house, and I was going home in despair because I had seen too many slices of homemade cake and way too many dream catchers. And I think it got to a point at one point where there were quite a lot of people who were jumping on the whole concept, but actually what they were without being rude, they were hobbyists rather than craftspeople.
Yeah, so that one person, that one very serious artist, was Ned Hoskins, who was a great artist. And there were a group of artists who had come out of the Open Studios movement, so
Yes.
which is quite an important movement in the 70s. So yeah, it was serious, and but I think. And there is still a very serious, and there are some really great artists and sculptors and painters and sculptors and artists work in different media. But I think we also feel that it's very important that it's a community event and it is inclusive. And we kind of believe that creativity is an important thing for everybody to do. So we're completely non-judgmental.
Not like being terribly judgmental, I know.
And we, and also because we really do want it to be community-wide. And we work with artists with learning disabilities, and there's artists who are older senior citizens in residence. And so, yeah, I think we do. I think also that our audience, they're very different. Some people love one thing, some people love.
Some people
they're not
want a
all
dream
like us.
catcher,
Yes,
Judy.
yes.
Some people do,
Yes.
or a coaster. And I completely understand, and I agree with that. Actually, moving what we do as creative people out to a wider audience, because some of the things. You must have had this in your life, that people have said, "Oh, you do for a living what I would consider to be a hobby."
Well, I think the arts and creative industries, I mean, it's a very large employer in it's a large contributor to the country. It's a very important sector.
Well, our homes and lives would look very much duller if we didn't have designers and artists.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's essential, but I think it's also, I think a lot of people have found, particularly recently, that actually creativity is very important to our mental well-being as well.
Well, this year has been quite challenging for a lot of us, being locked down and being forced to stay at home. I've certainly rediscovered my passion for painting and drawing in 2020 because I've had time to do it, and sitting at home thinking, what am I going to do next? I get the paints back out and do that. And the great thing is that in the same way that a lot of people started baking, I mean the banana bread epidemic, a lot of people have actually started to discover their creativity. And there are lots of people, I think, who have gone through the education system not being allowed to explore their creativity. So the Artists' Open Houses, as you say, encouraging people to do this, that's a good thing, surely.
Yeah, and I think, lockdown it's really provided that sort of space in people's lives to think and to maybe kind of be a little more introspective and to explore maybe ways of working and ways of thinking that they hadn't done or hadn't had time to do previously. And and I think people have found that actually doing art makes you happy.
Yes, and it doesn't matter how good it is or how bad it is if it makes you feel better.
Yes.
And that's a lovely thing about it, isn't it?
Yes.
And if your creativity manifests itself as playing with modelling clay or flower arranging, actually being able to express yourself in a way that you've probably felt that you couldn't or perhaps shouldn't do. Is it's wonderful.
Yes, and I think because maybe people aren't encouraged so much at school anymore to get involved in creativity. So, and I think so long as it's kind of that you're doing it for yourself and not necessarily worrying too much about the outcome and how you'll be judged by other people. It's always a good thing.
Lots of people that I've seen starting out at Artists' Open Houses have gone on, in fact, to build brilliant careers. There's some beautiful work on show every year, and I love going through and spotting the people that have been there year on year and seeing what they're doing now and how they've developed as artists, and going around. I mean, it's a lot. When it's a real trail and you go out, it's an awful lot of properties to visit. And you've got to beat your way through the people who are only going around to see what your kitchen fittings are like. But it's every weekend in the festival or right through December. So you've got to be specific about what you want to see, haven't you?
Well, this year's a little bit different.
Much easier this year.
This year, obviously, the May Festival was postponed. And so the festival that was launched 2 weeks ago is an amalgamation of the May Festival and the Christmas Festival. But and so it's kind of it's all the good best elements of both, of the Great Art of May Festival, the craft and Christmas, unique handmade Christmas shopping element of the Christmas festival. But because for a lot of people they didn't really feel comfortable opening their houses this year, so in fact there's only around 60 houses, so it is manageable to get around them this year.
At 60.
But there's very many more who are taking part online.
Well, listen, we're going to go to a break, and when we come back we'll talk more specifically about how 2020's winter open houses actually work. We'll see you after these ads.
Look out, we're here for you. We're here for you.
Hello, welcome back to Look Out with me, Andrew Kay, and my guest Judy Stevens from the Artists Open Houses. Now, before the break we talked about the fact that this year, with May disappearing, the winter one is actually embracing what would have shown in May.
Exactly.
As well as the more craft-based shows that you normally have running up to Christmas, and quite sensibly, a lot of artists catering for that gift market at that time of year. Has it made a big difference to the content?
Well, I think it's probably it's a balance of both of the 60 houses that are taking part. That there is some real serious and great. There's some painters and ceramicists. They're amazing. And then there's houses that are really concentrating on Christmas gifts, but they're beautiful and really lovely handmade. So,
I mean, it is the most wonderful way to do your Christmas shopping, not only because they are great things, but also because people are buying into the local economy and helping support people who will have had a really tough year this year.
Yeah.
Because everything has changed.
I think it's been a really hard year for almost all artists. That their outlets of galleries and have all dried up. Many artists haven't been. They weren't able to have any government support. As freelancers, maybe they weren't eligible.
Well, let's face it, the government basically annexed the whole of the arts community, didn't it? In so many ways.
It hasn't been easy. So yeah.
I mean, it comes as no surprise after so many years of Tory governments axing really art education.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yes, I don't know if you want me to.
Well, we could do probably 3 programmes about art education and the Conservative policies on this.
You certainly could, yes. But yeah, I mean, as a direct result, I think, and for a lot of artists, that a significant part of their income is made during the open house festival. So for them, for the open houses not to take place has been a big gap in their income. So for that reason, that we thought we should go ahead whatever, and it's been so hard because obviously we were ready to go ahead when the second lockdown happened. Then we thought, well, we'll lose the first 2 weekends, and then we've been unsure until a couple of days ago whether it would be okay for the open houses to actually open this weekend. We had confirmation from the council that that open houses, although they're in private dwellings, are seen as businesses, so they're sort of pop-up shops.
So the truth is, there are 2 ways this season to AOH. You can actually do it online. There is a virtual presence, but also, of the 60 houses, are all 60 opening?
Yeah. Yes, and all the I think there's about 60 online, 60 opening, in fact, but all the open houses that we've provided. Sort of over the lockdown period, we were developing new online platforms for them, and so every open house now has a big online gallery, so you can connect with the artists, browse their work online, buy their work direct from them online. But we also invited artists to make videos of their open houses, so they can introduce.
Lots of which I've been watching.
They're really
wonderful,
great, actually.
Aren't they?
Yeah, and some are done in different ways. Some are kind of literally taking virtual visitors on tours around their open houses, showing them the work on the walls. And for others, it's more talking about their work and talking about the ways that they produce the work and the ideas behind it. So, but they're all really different and interesting ways to engage.
Equally valid, and they are very, very entertaining. It's worth going on there just to have a look at how people work
And,
and a sneak around their homes as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Because that is always fascinating about artist open houses, that you're actually privileged to be going into the creative hub
yes.
from which that artist works.
Yes, yeah, because for a lot of artists, their studios are in their houses, so sometimes their studios will be open and you can see the actual places where the work's made. But I think to actually be able to engage with the artists and hear about the processes of making and the ideas is great. So we've been able to kind of replicate that in an online version.
And all the artists have the facility to take payments and arrange delivery and
make backs payments.
One of the things that I've always thought would be lovely to be able to do is to go into artists' open houses, into those houses out of the festival seasons and see what they actually own and hang on their own walls.
Yes.
Because I know, my house looks like a gallery anyway, there's so much work on the walls, but I think it's fascinating to see what artists have chosen to decorate their homes with. Or I don't like the word decorate really, because I think owning a piece of art is about falling in love with a piece of art, and it's on the wall because you love it, not because it matches your sofa. Although I wouldn't discourage anyone for buying something that matches the sofa if that's how you do it.
It might be an interesting interim project too.
I think it would be lovely. I would
yes.
love to see. I've been in your home when it's not been the festival, so I know what you have on your walls, and I think you probably know the sort of things that I have on my walls. But I think it would be lovely to go into people's homes in that way. That could be a nice project.
Yes, maybe that could be done online as a.
Yes, absolutely online.
Project.
You wouldn't want to be going around when people are doing that ironing and things.
It would be a bit weird, but it could be fascinating. Yes, and certainly in artist studios, during the period when they're making the work. So I think, and I think that's something good that's come out of lockdown, that we have introduced new digital aspects, and which will be taken forward in the future.
You must see a lot of new artists coming up. You've been doing it for, I won't say how many years now, but you've been doing it for a long time. It must be very refreshing to see the younger artists coming along and joining in. And do you find that lots of younger people who are embracing this concept?
Yeah, we've always really encouraged young college leavers particularly, and I think it's that really difficult period when you've gone through college, you've been really nurtured, and then you're suddenly out in the world and there's a kind of empty space. So Artists Open Houses is a really good place. You've got something to work towards. You've got an audience coming to see your work. So we've worked on projects with young artists, and this year we're also working on a project with third-year sculpture students from the University of Brighton. And we're really pleased that this year David Shrigley, who's Brighton resident as well as being an internationally regarded artist, has worked with us to provide some mentoring for both groups of young artists, and he's been absolutely amazing.
On the whole, artists are a nice lot. They're a kind bunch, and they will actually join in and do these things.
Excellent.
Because I think those of us who grew up at a time when art education was taken seriously, even in schools, feel that we should be putting something back, as it's been stripped away in so many ways. And I think that's really very important. I miss my teaching role, which I did for a long, long time. And it's lovely when someone asks you, how did you do that? Or can you teach me how to do that?
Yeah, and I think, the main I don't know if lesson's the right word, but what he's been saying to the young artist is that the most important thing is you just keep doing it. Every day you just keep doing it.
The one thing that was always lacking in art education and art further education was there was never any education about the business of being an artist. They didn't teach us how to function as a business person, and it is a business at that point. So you get your degree and you're set off on your creative career, and you don't know the first thing about finding an agent, finding a gallery, dealing with all those things, and that's missing. In your role with the Artists Open Houses, you have to obviously help those people that subscribe to this and teach them how to make it work in a business sense,
and how to hang the work. How to actually put on an exhibition. So we produce a guide that has advice on all areas of how to price work, and but also that that we encourage galleries and other commissioners to come to the open houses to find new artists, young artists of the future. So actually many artists, by taking part in the open houses, also get taken up by galleries. So
Yes.
it kind of works on many levels of selling direct to the public, but also furthering their careers in other ways.
And of course, over the years, some of the artists that you've shown have gone from being little known to being hugely successful, which means that someone like myself who've bought things at what I would call bargain prices early on in someone's career, I can't afford to buy them anymore. I'm glad that I've got 4 or 5 by particular artists, but I couldn't possibly afford to buy them anymore. But it's great because you're actually setting them off on a financially successful path.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you know, for a lot of artists that it's been really instrumental in their careers, and still is, and you know, a large part of their income comes from selling their work during the open houses.
Well, I think the entire city of Brighton and Hove is grateful to you for creating this creative forum annually, and even managing to do it during the COVID lockdown. So thank you to you, thank you to your partner Chris, and to the people, the team behind AOH and what you do. I'm looking forward to being able to come and have a snoop around.
And just to say, or to say thank you to our team actually, because our team is amazing, but also that your visits will be entirely safe, that we have PPE and
Everything's in place.
all COVID guidelines in place at all open houses. Some houses you can book online, so yeah, it'll be a much more pleasant experience probably than crowded shopping centres. Yeah.
Everything's better than a crowded shopping centre as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much for coming in, Judy. Thank you for watching Lookout. We'll be back in very soon with yet another programme, but for now, it's good night.